up for you specifically for our savvy partners. So, what are we going to be discussing today? The process of founding a veteran focused nonprofit. We have an incredible guest that certainly has a wealth of experience in this arena, Mr. Mike Woljohn. So, we'll get to him in a second and introduce him. But before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few things. So, Savvy is a California based nonprofit organization dedicated to clarifying VA benefits for veterans and the organizations that support them. We focus specifically on transition, catering to service members that are currently on active duty, guard, and reserve within 1 year of separation or retirement to 1 year post separation or retirement. So, for all of our partners that are joining us, you can certainly sign up so that you'll be notified of our future webinars that are coming up and get access to some really, really great material that will help you serve the veteran community more effectively. And the way to do that is by simply going to www.savvyvets.org/organizations, and you should be able to see that link below. So without further ado, I would just like Mr. Mike Woljohn to do a very quick introduction. Mike?
Hey, thank you, Adrianne. Quick introduction of myself. Keep it as brief as I can. I served in the Marine Corps in the infantry 2000 to 2004. About 8 years later, I fell into some pretty severe symptoms of combat stress. Once I was able to pull out of that, started this nonprofit to help other veterans figure out how to pull out of it for themselves. Been running it since 2015.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So we're just going to jump right into it. We have some really great questions lined up for you, Mike. So hopefully you're ready. So our first one, tell us about your military experience and your transition out of service.
Sure. So like I mentioned, I was in the Marine Corps Infantry from 2000 to 2004. My first deployment was during time of peace. I was on the 31st MEU, meaning I was over in Okinawa and in the Pacific Ocean. I got to visit Australia, do some really fun things. My second deployment was the initial invasion to Iraq, and kind of a fun tidbit on that. My first full day in combat was my 21st birthday. So I was taking enemy prisoner of war on my 21st birthday. My transition out of the military happened shortly after coming back. I got out in 2004, like I mentioned, so I came back in late 2003. I did my transition out. I didn't realize that anything that happened during my service or my time in combat changed my brain at all during the time. And I felt like I had a pretty successful transition. I went to college. I got a 4-year degree in business, emphasized in commercial real estate. And then if you mix commercial real estate with the government, you end up managing federal buildings and US courthouses. So that's what I did across the Midwest. I started in Indianapolis, eventually transferred to northern Minnesota. That was my transition coming out of the military.
Awesome. And so what was your first experience in business? How did you get started?
So I mentioned I got my degree in business, but I wouldn't say when I was managing federal buildings for the government I didn't feel like I was really in business at the time. I was just kind of following the policies that were written by people before me. So my first experience came with another nonprofit that I took part in, the Institute for Military and Veteran Families. They run a program called EBV, or Entrepreneurship Boot Camp for Veterans. I took part in that in 2013 with the plan of starting a for-profit business and hiring veterans in this for-profit business and encouraging them on the clock to go through some of the programs that I'm now running in the nonprofit business. So my first experience was with an electrical company that I ran for just a short period before getting into the nonprofit. And I won't answer or go further on that yet, because I know that's a future question coming up along the lines of starting the nonprofit.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me keep my thunder over here with my questions. So what was the event or maybe the person that inspired you to start your mission?
So the mission with 23rd Veterans, to transition our veterans that are living with trauma. The inspiration behind that is my personal story. It was 2008 that I had my first panic attack. I didn't know it was a panic attack. I thought it was a heart attack. I thought I was dying, and that kept happening to me. So between 2008 and 2013, I went to the hospital quite a few times thinking that I was dying of like a heart attack, or maybe I had cancer or a stroke or something was happening to me physically. I had a lot of social anxiety. I was very isolated. I was looking for other ways to cover up my unhappiness. Uh, and in 2013, I stumbled on a way to pull out of that. And once I could see hope again and feel happiness again, I could finally look back and realize all these things I was going through between 2008 and 2013 were related to combat. It was all anxiety, it was all panic. It wasn't that I was dying of some physical ailment. And realizing that made me realize, well, something must have changed in my brain when I was in combat. I mean, clearly. So I did a lot of studying on the human brain and why it's supposed to change when we're in a traumatic situation, why that's a strong survival mechanism and it's supposed to happen. And then I learned how to utilize those same brain chemicals to retrain it to new positive events. So the same way that our brain can be trained to relate triggers to negative events, we can relate those same triggers to new positive events. And that's where we got some really intelligent people together and put together this program that we'll talk more about.
Beautiful. That's really great. Now, when it comes to who was there to really help support your process, did you do it on your own or did you have other people assisting you?
The biggest support I had was by far our IVMF, their program. They run EBV. I'd highly recommend that to anybody looking to get into business that's a veteran, whether it's a for-profit or a nonprofit. It's a couple months of online classes, so it's very doable at home and on a work schedule. And then it's a week to 10 days in a university somewhere around the country where you're learning from other entrepreneurs that have been successful around the world, learning their failures, learning their successes. And then on top of that, they give you a ton of support afterwards for the next year. I won't go into details on what they do, but it's definitely a program that's worth looking into. And if I had to attribute any of my success to mentors or to others doing it with me, it's IVMF.
I know that they're a really incredible program, and we have actually quite a few of our veterans that we refer over to them. So I definitely agree. It's a really great organization to work with. And so, how did you end up funding your startup process?
Ooh, that's a very non-glorious answer to that question. So, what happened when I thought I was going to be running this for-profit, and I could hire veterans, and then I could have them go through this program on the clock. Once I started the program, started getting into it, and recruiting veterans for it, and putting them through this 14-week program, I saw how successful it was and could be, and that became so much more important to me than running a business. So I was still working for the government at the time. So I decided to quit that job and I cashed in my retirement. So I took a penalty for cashing it in early, and then I took a big tax hit for not donating it directly because of some other reasons. I didn't want to donate it to the organization to be able to live off of it because I didn't want it to make it look like I was living off all the organization's donations. So anyway, yeah, that's the funding process for me. As I cashed in my retirement and I used that to start it. Um,
So there's no
other
angel investors or
Yeah,
anything for not.
I'm an angel investor. I became so passionate after seeing the results that I felt like I didn't have another choice.
Right, right. And so with that startup process, what were some of the considerations when you were thinking about who you wanted to join your board and really be a part of that organizational structure and decision making?
Sure. So at this with the startup, I was pretty much anybody that I could convince that this was going to be a success. Anybody I could have um, their faith in that I could help lead the organization to where we wanted to go. I was able to find board members in local community groups. I did not have a lot of connections at the time, but I joined groups like Toastmasters. I joined the Chamber of Commerce. I went through leadership courses at the Chamber of Commerce, and I found out when you go through a course that costs more than you think you want to spend on a course like that, you're going to be in it with a bunch of people that are spending that money as well. Meaning they probably have found success in life, and maybe that was through business, and maybe they'd be a really good mentor for where you want to go.
That and having that support is definitely important and certainly helping to navigate the process because the board has a lot of responsibilities and really ensure the success of the organization. So that's really incredible.
Mhm.
Now, did you create strategic partnerships very early on, or did you want to really focus on just going at it, with the team that you had?
Sure. So I would say that we are still pretty early on in the nonprofit. It's backing up a tad with the board members. Once we became more established, then we start attracting board members, and people feel very honored to be asked to be a part of it. And it's easier to gain the attention of people who have had that experience before. But yeah, starting up was a little more difficult. And that's the same with the strategic partnerships. There's, I think, 44,000 veteran nonprofits in the country, and a lot of them aren't very successful. A lot of them don't really know what they're doing. And what we found is early on, a, the people that we might be approaching for that type of support, whether it's a partnership, strategic partnership, or a big funding organization, they have probably already been approached by quite a few veteran nonprofits that haven't carried out the plans that they say they're going to carry out. So it takes a lot of relationship building, a lot of trust building before being able to execute those partnerships. But they're definitely helpful when you can.
And creating that leverage and being able to really have a combined objective is a great way to really spread your reach. But sometimes when people have conflicting objectives, or maybe they're at a different point in their organization, then it's something to really grow into, as opposed to starting on very early on. So that's definitely a great point to bring up. Now, what was the most surprising thing about launching a nonprofit?
Most surprising thing. So the thing that caught me the most off guard was that other nonprofits aren't generally jumping on board with your mission. It totally makes sense now that I understand it. There's a lot of competition out there for nonprofits to be able to fund the programs that they have going already. So I thought walking into the veteran nonprofit space, like all the other veteran nonprofits, would be great. Let's all get together and work together. But we found out, especially when it comes to fundraising, it's really difficult to work together. So it's important to try very hard to make those friends and those relationships up front. So as 23rd Veteran expands to other cities, and we began this in Southern California, trying to figure out how are we going to walk into a new space and make friends and not make other nonprofits feel threatened that 23rd Veteran is coming here to try to help veterans as well, because we all are trying to help the same people. And it's so what we've done is try to find a way to help other newer nonprofits raise money, because we all struggle with that, especially when we're small. So 23rd Veteran has a large fundraising event, and we offer other nonprofits to partner with us. Like, they can become part of that fundraising event, and they can take funds away from it. We can take care of the things that small nonprofits struggle with, like the permitting and the insurance and legal paperwork and just all the logistics behind the event, so that the smaller nonprofit can just get people involved and do fundraising. And we found success in Southern California with that strategy, and we were beginning to find the same success as we expand to the East Coast and other cities in our home state of Minnesota.
Well, I will personally attest to the fact that we are so thankful that you reached out to our organization. Being able to collaborate with you guys was an incredible experience. And I really truly hope that more nonprofits take that approach to really collaborate and work together to serve our veteran population, because there's a lot of need that's out there. So, and you were the first to do that. So thank you, Mike, for taking that initiative and really reaching out. I think that that's a really important part of the process, is just being a good teammate and being able to work well with others. So you definitely set the bar for that one.
Thank you, Adrian.
Of course. So what is something that maybe you wish you had known back then, and really back then just meaning when you first started?
I wouldn't say that I have any regrets with anything that I've done. There's nothing that, as 23rd Veteran grows to the point that we have now, and as we will in the future, I know things are going to change. I know my mindset on the organization is going to change. I know our board members are going to change, and we're going to have to change our culture as we grow, because an organization that's working with $1,000 has to have a very different culture than an organization that's working with $10 million. So what I'm thankful for is just having that attitude and just knowing we're going to continue to learn, and then building that attitude within the culture. Anytime somebody has a failure or something that doesn't go as well as we would like it to in the future, just having the attitude to recognize what that is, and we're going to continue to grow off of that.
Perfect. And, with growth comes definitely increased responsibility and plenty of new challenges and opportunities to really take your organization and obviously your leadership team to the next level. So exciting times ahead for sure. Now, what do you think the biggest challenge is that's really impacting veteran nonprofits?
Uh, Definitely the funding. I mean, there's so many nonprofits out there, not just veteran nonprofits. There is legitimate competition for funding because there's only a set amount of funding that can go around. And if my numbers are correct, the nonprofit space only controls about 2% of the marketplace. So the majority of the funding is clearly in the for-profit space. And so the challenge to tackle there is, I think, less on how to get funding that other nonprofits have, and more how to motivate donors or motivate for profits to give more funding. Because our 2% is almost all coming from giving. Some of it's coming from sales, but most of it's coming from giving. So, what does it take to motivate a for profit company or a person to donate to nonprofits? And when we're approach the challenge that way, it's a lot more fun. It's really exciting to be able to provide a value to somebody that they had no idea that value even existed. There's so many people out there that love to give, they just haven't done it yet. And when you can motivate them to give for the reasons they want to and to fulfill that purpose in their life, because so many of us are missing that purpose in today's world, especially in the work world. And if they can fulfill that purpose by donating, it's a win-win situation on both sides.
And I definitely agree. Something that you said that really sticks with me is the fact that really the donation process is about the donor, right? How can we make you feel good about your contribution, and what does it look like? What is important to you, and how can we convey that value so that you're more willing to support, whether it's an individual or a corporation? Obviously, giving can be done in different capacities and from different sources. So it's really important to focus on the donor and how we can convey that value and that need so that they would be willing to show up and participate. So, very well stated. What's been one of your biggest organizational successes?
Uh, so my in 23rd Veteran, because I started it, because I'm still the executive director of it, a lot of our organization is based in my history. So what comes to mind when you say that is when I first realized the program that we run works, when I first realized that in me, I started talking with my friends that I served with in the Marine Corps back from 2003. So we didn't have Facebook then. We almost had MySpace at that time. So we didn't really stay in contact. When I started talking with them 10 years later about the symptoms that I was going through, they started telling me that they were going through the exact same symptoms. We all had the social anxiety, I should say almost all. We almost all had the panic attacks, and that we had very similar dreams. We struggled in relationships, a lot of things. And I felt like I was the only one that was able to pull out of it. So one of my motivating factors in starting the organization wasn't just to help other veterans, but it was more to help the ones that I served with. How am I going to create this organization that's going to be able to expand and get to my friends that are in California, or get to my friends that are in Florida? And when we were running our event in San Diego last February, it was our first time in San Diego, I had two buddies that I served with come to the fundraising event. And not only show up for that, but they both said that they would be the first ones to commit to the program when we were able to get it there. So one of our biggest organization successes is fulfilling, or getting, at least we're close to fulfilling one of the initial goals I had when starting the organization, and that's actually helping the buddies that I served with.
That's awesome. It comes full circle, right? You're able to get out and give back to those that you specifically served with and those that are, our fellow brother and sister in arms. So that's awesome. So I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball here, and I want to ask you one last question, if you don't mind. What's next for 23rd Veteran? What can we look forward to in 2020?
Oh, that's a good question. So the program, that we run, I haven't talked much about it. This 14-week transition program for veterans that are living with trauma. It starts off with a week in the mountains or in the ocean. They go sea kayaking or something. We take a dozen veterans from one location, send them to a distant outward bound adventure where they can build camaraderie again. And then when they come back, they go through 13 weeks of fitness and positive psychology. So the whole purpose of the fitness and 23rd veteran is to release a brain chemical that helps with our memory. So everything we do after our workouts, we can remember a lot stronger. And that's where we get into the positive trigger reassociation and the positive psychology. So what's new for 2020 is we are going to boost that program. We've been running it now for 4 years. We're on our 7th one. We just launched this week. We actually have the veterans in North Carolina right now in the mountains as we speak. They're flying back on Thursday for their initial camaraderie building week. But what we're going to do is make that program a heck of a lot better. We've improved it based on veteran feedback, but what we can really do is create a system that people can easily implement this program where they are with what they have, rather than waiting for Mike Waldron and our volunteers and our employees to get to them. So definitely boosting the reconditioning program. Then of course the Nearly Naked Ruck March. I don't think I used the name yet, so if you haven't heard of that, that's our fundraising event, the Nearly Naked Ruck March. We're expanding that as well. So our next expansion is Philadelphia in November.
That's awesome. So no sleep coming up, huh?
Yeah, we should.
Lots to do.
Minneapolis Nearly Naked in a week and a half, and then we
Oh
have
my
another one in Philadelphia next month. Really looking forward to it, though. And then we're back in California in May after.
Yay. Well, we're definitely looking forward to having you back on this side of the coast. So that should be exciting. And hopefully all of those events go great. I do have a couple of questions for you, Mike, from our audience here. And please, anybody that's currently signed on to our webinar, if you do have any questions, we have a Q&A at the bottom that you can certainly utilize, as well as anybody that's on our live. If we're not able to get to your questions, we will definitely follow up afterwards. So first question. How did you learn and become comfortable with fundraising?
Did somebody say I was comfortable with fundraising? No, I'm definitely one of those people that's a barrier that I can still cross. There's still a lot of asks that I don't ask because I'm not quite comfortable with it yet. But kind of where I said earlier is what I am comfortable with is showing people how to find their purpose through giving. So when it comes to larger donors, a lot of times there's budgets for that, and we're able to show them directly. So it's what's happening in our programs is absolutely amazing. If somebody that gives, just say $1 million a year on their budget, actually took part in our program and saw the transition and saw what happens, no doubt they would want to give most of what they give to it. But how do you get that feeling from this 14-week program that there's no way they can take part in to this person who's only got 15 seconds to find out what you do? And that's really where we tackle the giving side, is how do we present this purpose in a meme, basically, or at least motivate them enough in a meme or billboard status so that they'll look further into it. And then if we can, what is most successful is going in and giving a presentation. So when they can hear people in the organization speak, myself included, also our graduates of the program or their family members, that's where that purpose can really be brought to them. And that's why they're giving, just because they want to feel that purpose.
Great, great. Now, the next question that I have is, how many volunteers, I'm guessing volunteers or people, do you feel is necessary to really make an organization successful? Maybe that's from a startup process. There's not too much clarity there, but.
Sure. There's two very different theories in nonprofits, and they're both honorable theories, honorable ways to run a nonprofit and to help people. One would be a smaller local organization. It's based almost all volunteers usually. And the other one would be an organization that wants to bring what they have on a national level. So if you have something that's truly different, I wouldn't recommend bringing something that's already being done on a national level. You're going to have more impact helping somebody else that's already doing it. But if you have something that's different to go on a national level, I would start thinking about more of how do I run this like a business? Because to get people to take the responsibility of spending millions of dollars on people, on others, it's a little more than a volunteer position. So maybe what we're asking here more is what does it take to volunteer on a smaller scale and to help people in your own community? Um, and that's really, it totally depends on what you want to do. I know there's nonprofits that build bikes for children. They raise money, buy a bike from Walmart, or ask somebody to donate it, and then they can bring it to. I think there's one in my hometown where they bring it to a car wash, and the volunteers are the car wash employees. When it rains or there's no cars coming through, they put bikes together. So it's very, very simple and it's very honorable. Great thing to do. I wish maybe if I have more information, or if you send some more information to Adrianne, I can help answer that question a little better. But you can run a nonprofit by yourself if that's what you want to do. And if you want to make it an official 501c3 organization, all you need is 3 board members, and you can be one of them.
Perfect. And yes, please, to the individual that sent that, if there's any more clarity needed, please contact us directly and we'll get that over to Mike. 2 more questions for you, Mike. My next question is, did you ever struggle deciding whether to pay people or keep everybody as a volunteer?
I wouldn't say I struggled deciding to do that. No, it's when it came to taking a salary myself, and that's a little on a personal note. The first couple of years of 23rd Veteran, as I mentioned earlier, I just cashed in my salary and I lived off of that, or cashed in my retirement. I lived off of that and called that my salary. So, but when it actually came to taking money out of the organization to make that a salary, it was super difficult. Like it was absolute minimum. What does it take for me to live? And had that discussion with the board, and that's where we're at. But when it comes to hiring other people, I don't struggle with paying people to do good things in the world. I think a lot of society has that backwards. Like if you make alcohol and you get people drunk and you become a millionaire doing it, people celebrate you. That's great. But if you're running a nonprofit and you make a comfortable living for a 4-person family, a lot of people don't celebrate that. Like, why are you making a comfortable living? You're helping people. Like, so I'm okay allowing people to live comfortably while helping, especially if they fit the description of those that we are here for, like veterans.
Great. And last question, I think that this is a really great way to kind of close it off here. What would you tell somebody that's looking to start their own organization?
Go to IVMF if you're a veteran. They truly are. If that is a veteran, right? Again, yeah, check it out. EBV, such an awesome entrepreneurship program. I know there's others out there. That's just what I was birthed through. So that's why I go back there. Bunker Labs is another entrepreneurship program for veterans. Otherwise, start with Google, and that was how I got into business. I always had the entrepreneurship mindset. I knew I wanted to do it. One day when I was frustrated at work, and when I was working for the government. I was on the clock, by the way, so thanks for the tax dollars on this one. I just opened a new window and I said entrepreneurship programs for veterans, and that's how I started. So if you're very looking to start to get into it, do some research on programs that can help, and do some thinking. If it's a nonprofit, maybe there's already a nonprofit out there doing something super similar, and you can be better off partnering with them. And a lot of those early startup stages can be taken care of. I was just asked last week by a veteran friend that wanted to start a nonprofit that allows veterans to find what nonprofits to volunteer for. He found a lot of purpose in his life volunteering for nonprofits. He said, well, we want this organization that can connect veterans and nonprofits. Well, I just did a quick Google, and I think Helping Hands was one of the biggest ones. I might have the name wrong. And that was my recommendation to him. See what you can do to partner with this company, maybe start a veteran branch of it. And that way, the 10 years of building your branding, your donors, your accounting systems, your HR is already taken care of. I mean, and you don't need all of those things if you're looking to work on a smaller level. But if you're looking to go national, helping somebody might be more effective in actually completing the mission you want to complete. If the mission you want to complete is be an executive director or a business owner, that might be different.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you for that incredible advice. Now, where can people reach you, Mike?
23rdveteran.org.
Awesome.
Yeah, Nearly Naked Ruck March is on Facebook. 23rd Veterans on Facebook. We're both on Instagram as well. It's all under the organization 23rd Veteran. And my personal, I believe I shared this on my personal Facebook, and I was probably tagged. So you're welcome to reach out to me in any scenario.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mike. This has been an incredible experience. Thank you for everybody that joined us from home. There were a couple of questions that were just pending, so we'll get those over to Mike and send them out to everybody as a follow up. Otherwise, you guys don't forget to sign up for our list so that you'll be notified of our upcoming webinars and all of our great content that we provide about veteran benefits and the transition process. For organizations, that's again www.savvyvets.org/organizations. Thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful day. And Mike, we appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
See you soon.
Bye bye.